Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. It's been a minute since I have been dropping some videos down here. I'm meant to be a little bit more consistent, but life has since changed for me. All good things. I've recently picked up a part-time job just here locally where I live, and it has kind of cut into my editing time. So been focusing more on delivering galleries and films over posting content on social media and YouTube and on Apple Podcasts and all of the things. So I'm hoping now that I am getting into a bit more of a consistent rhythm with this part-time job and adjusting to the new life updates and things like that, that I am going to be able to drop more content consistently, get back into Fridays at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and all of that amazing magical stuff. But today we are going to be doing something super fun. As you can see, I am recording, believe it or not, in the afternoon, but it is dark in my studio because we have now entered into the some people love it. I am not one of them, but we've now entered into the daylight savings time of our year, and it gets dark at 4:30 p.m. where I live. On top of that, we've also entered the rainy season. So where I live in Cali, once we hit, I think, November, it just rains. And that is in preparation for snow season. If you go about like 20 minutes north of where I live, it's snowing. It's like a big time snowstorm. But in the valley, it's warmer, and so it really doesn't snow here. It just like rains a lot. So it's a super cozy, cliche, stereotypical fall day here in Cali. So in the spirit of a cozy, rainy day, I thought that we could try our hand at shooting indoors and maybe setting up this really cozy scene. It's raining outside and we're reading, and it's all just makes me want to like sip on a nice little hot chocolate or something like that. And as the rain is falling down outside and we hear it through the window, lightning strikes, and it's this like muffled and really subtle like lightning flare and all of that through the window. And we could just create this like really cozy scene together. But of course, I don't know when lightning is going to strike here in California. I don't know when lightning is going to strike if I'm ever shooting, but it's really fun to be able to manipulate it and almost fake it. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to fake some lightning in some footage that I shot here in my office earlier this afternoon. And I'm just going to show you how I did that. So I've actually done this a couple of other times. There was one instance where I actually shot a wedding in the rain, and I thought it would be super fun to like add back in all of the like aesthetic and the feels of what we were hearing and what we were seeing when we were shooting, because obviously I'm not going to use like the in-camera raw audio in the film. And when I was editing the film and in the middle of post-production, my creative juices were flowing. The venue that we were shooting at was like super aesthetic, and it was like a cottage. It was actually a museum, but it had a lot of like cottage feels. And so it was raining the majority of the day. So I just like set up this static shot. I kid you not, it was like one of the most cozy shots that I've ever like used my camera, like pointed my camera at and pressed record. That's all I did. I set it up on a tripod, pressed record, like framed it up nicely, and just recorded the rain on a static shot for like 30 seconds. And I used that shot in the film. And I just, when I was editing, I was like, you know what would really spice this up? Some lightning flashes and some thunder rolling. Like, obviously you can hear the rain outside, but when you're getting cozy at home, you know it's going to be a really, really good day when you hear the thunder roll. Like, it's already cozy with the rain, but then the thunder rolls and the lightning flashes and you're like, oh God, it's gotten like 10 times better. It's so much more cozy. I'm going to curl up with my coffee or my hot chocolate or my apple cider or whatever, and I am not leaving this spot on the couch. Like, you feel me. Basically, it was fake. I faked it all, And I wanted to show you kind of how I did it using some footage that I shot this afternoon here in my office. And hopefully it can kind of give you like an additional little thing to try in your creative journey. Maybe you're shooting some rainy footage and you never would have thought to add in thunder rolls or lightning flashes, or maybe you don't even know how to do that. Like you're like, oh, that's super aesthetic and cool, but like how in the heck do I execute making it look even remotely believable? I'm not an expert at faking these things, so I'm just going to show you what I did, and hopefully it is helpful and maybe like kind of lays the foundation for ways that you can do this in the future. So let's hop right in. Okay, so obviously you saw this at the beginning of the clip, just me sitting in the chair is another static shot, very similar to the other one that I did in the wedding film. And what we see here is the flash of the thunder, and then we hear the thunder clap, and then the rain, you know, muffled in the background. And that's it. Really, really simple shot, nothing like fancy about it, but I can break down basically what I did. So big key factors in making this look relatively convincing is going to be lots of masking. It's going to be layers, and you have to draw attention to what it is that you're trying to sell. And so those are the kind of like three things that I did. Outside of the masking, another big thing is going to be sound design. If you don't have the sound design in place, like the thunder claps and the rain, it's not going to be as clear to your audience what it is that you're trying to tell them, what it is that you're trying to communicate. So make sure that on top of the masking and on top of all of the fancy schmancy color grading and things like that, make sure that you have your sound effects in place to help really round it all out. But what I'm going to show you is how I created the look of it. Basically, what I did is I just went onto YouTube and found like a flashing overlay. What that looks like without the shape mask on it is this. It's just like a flash like right here all over the screen. And so what I did with my image was I have this one shot, and I wanted obviously all of the light to be like streaming from the window because that makes sense. The lightning's outside, the storm's outside, and it's leaking into the window. So I layered two of the same like flash overlays and mask them to different sizes. So the first size is like strictly the size of the window with a little bit of overhang with the light coming through. And then the second layer is basically that same shape, but just extended into the room, much larger. So that first mask, if we kind of just like take everything, like all the effects off, this is what the mask with just the window looks like. I mean, it's good. It's the shape of the window, but it's not as convincing because it's confined to this small space. And basically what I did with this is I had this flash overlay, and I just messed with the opacity, like the time of it, because obviously it's not just going to, light isn't just going to appear out of nowhere and be like on, off, on, off, on, off. It's going to go, it'll be like a gradient. So it'll go from like 0% up to 100% down to 50% down to 0. Or however you want it to like fade in naturally. It's going to be quick. So your keyframes, when you bring up the opacity, can be fast, like, you know, over a couple frames. I think it was looks like over the course of 3 frames, I brought the opacity up from 0 to 40% and then back down to nothing. And then it's blank. Obviously I have this turned off, and then I layered another shape mask over the same like overlay that I have going on here, and manipulated it differently just to mimic the inconsistency of lightning and what it does. It's not going to be like the same exact look and the same exact shape and the same exact timing. It's not like rhythmic. I mean, it is, but it's not consistent, like just same thing every single time. The flashes are all going to be in different positions and have different shapes, especially coming through a window. So I basically just kind of pinpointed where the window was on the image and then created a shape mask that faded up quickly and then faded down quickly, pretty rhythmically, and then had all of these different shapes here. I layered these two over each other to create a little bit more of or a little bit less of consistency and have some brightness. And obviously this is going to be just a lot of like you playing around with whatever scene it is you're trying to set in order to make this look convincing. But this is what it looks like, just the flash. So if you think about when lightning flashes or when thunder rolls, like listen to an audio of that, like just go to YouTube and listen to thunder rolling. And then if you synchronize like a lightning flash with the thunder rolling, it's going to be this inconsistent rhythm, and just kind of match, you know, the rhythm of that with the flashes. So that's kind of what that is, just standing by itself. So I then kind of attached that to the window here. And when you play it just like by itself, it's pretty underwhelming. So as you can see, it's like, obviously the window is flashing, but it's just like, there's not like, it's not really that impressive. Obviously you have your protagonist, myself, turning to look and acknowledge the window, kind of like the storm came out of nowhere. So you want it to be a little bit more emphasized, a little bit more powerful. So making it kind of stand out a little bit more than that is going to require some layering. So again, here's what that looks like. Good, but not great. So basically what I did in order to emphasize it more, to draw more attention to the window and still kind of like sell the idea of the thunder rolling, the lightning flashes, making it look relatively real, but then also emphasizing it, was I took those same exact flash overlays and I basically just kind of like spread them out in a separate layer. So here's the second layer, and took those same lightning flashes and just spread them out across the screen a little bit more. So it came across both me and my dog a little bit more, like the light spread out and was a little bit more emphasized. And what I did was I made this layer, the smaller layer that surrounded the perimeter of the window, the brightest. And I basically took the opacity of this larger layer where everything kind of spreads out a little bit more across the whole image. I brought the opacity down. So if you look over here, opacity of this bottom layer is at 30% and the opacity of the top layer is at 85. And just to kind of show you what this looks like, this bottom layer, it's the same exact thing and it follows that same exact rhythm of the top layer. It's just all of that light is spread out and it's a little bit more dialed back. I have it feathered out all across the picture, and it's a little bit less emphasized. It's softer lighting, but it's the same exact rhythm to match the more confined lightning flashes around the window. So that's what that looks like. Same exact thing. It's just like spread out across the frame. And then what I did for both of these things is I changed the blend mode for both layers of the lightning flashes to overlay. So it kind of like blends a little bit more with the image, looks a little bit more realistic. And this is just kind of like personal preference. You can play around with your blending modes, and you know, if you like something that's a little bit more screen, or if you like add or soft light or whatever. I just felt that overlay looked the best, and then playing with the opacity, it just looked a little bit more realistic. Now, granted, I'm no expert. I'm not trying to be perfect here. I'm just trying to kind of sell the idea that we have this cozy reading nook, and not only is it raining, now the thunder's rolling and it's extra cozy. So just remember, these are all like learning things and we're just having fun here. So layering both of those things with the more confined lightning flash and then the more spread out, here is that together. So definitely a little bit more emphasized, a little bit more sellable. As I mentioned earlier, adding in the sound design is going to be pivotal. I was editing this before without the sound design, and it was really hard to like mentally envision what it all was going to sound like and if it was going to even feel real without the sound effects. So I would say, you know, get your sound design in place first and then design around the sound. And that should help you really kind of envision what it is that you're trying to communicate. Sound is so pivotal, but it definitely looks more believable, I would say, with the additional layer. It's not a ton of light, but having that really helps draw attention to the window. It helps emphasize what we're trying to say. So that's a huge, huge help. Now, the last thing I did after adding both of these layers here, I just felt like it was still missing something. And I don't know about you, but when I sit in my house and a thunderstorm like rolls through, when the lightning strikes and the thunder rolls and all of that light is streaming into the house, all of that light tends to like de-emphasize the indoor lighting, like the lamps and all the things that we have on to help illuminate the house, because it's pretty dark outside when it's raining, at least when it is here. And so when all of that outside light from the lightning is streaming in, the house on the inside almost looks darker, at least just for the time that it is lightning outside. And so I kind of wanted to have that happen in this shot, and that would help drive the attention of the viewer even more towards the window. So what I did in order to create that effect was I created a mask and then inverted it to help like darken the room and brighten the window, basically. So what I did was I created a draw mask over like just a black box, so I could kind of play with the opacity of that and almost like manipulate the picture here and make the room darker. So what I started out with was just this black box here. And I wanted, during the duration of the lightning strikes, I wanted the brightness of the inside of the camera shot, like what we're looking in. We're looking into this room. I wanted the room to darken during the time that the lightning was flashing. And so what I did is I just cut this box and played with the opacity to make the room manually darker. And while the lightning was flashing, I played with that opacity just using keyframes. So we went from, you know, it wasn't in use at all. So we have the opacity at 0%. And then a couple frames into the lightning strikes, I just moved up the opacity of the black box to 35%. And then it stays there at 35% up until one of the last lightning strikes. And then I start moving the opacity back down to 0% using keyframes. So it's like a slow thing. So without the mask on, here's what it looks like. So as you can see, that third layer of really bringing the inside of the image, the inside of the house lights down, it helps to emphasize the lightning outside. It kind of helps the characters like turning to look at the window and be like, what was that? Makes sense, because as we emphasize the lightning more and we emphasize the flashing more, using all these different masking tools and all these different ways to kind of like manipulate the window to be the main subject during that time, it makes it almost like a surprise for the character, and it makes it make sense that she goes from just like peacefully reading to like, oh, okay. It has its power in telling that element of the story. And so once again, let's look at it now with that third layer of darkening the inside to emphasize the lightning. And it looks really good. And obviously I put it up on the bottom of these two layers here, because if I had put it on top, it was going to darken the lightning overlays. And we don't want that. We obviously want the lightning overlays to be the brightest part of the image when it's flashing. So remember that everything happens in layers. So what's on the bottom is going to get manipulated by what's on top of it. So kind of just remember that in your post-production. The last piece of manipulating this image with all fake lighting, fake lightning, fake thunder, all of that, was I took this black box to just kind of like play with the exposure and the darkness of this image. I drew a mask on it around the window. It helped create a gradient of like the darkness or like where I wanted the darkness to fall in this room, and I inverted it. So I drew around the window, and originally it was darkening the window, and I didn't want that. So I inverted the mask so that it basically has a feathered gradient outside the window. So outside the window in this mask that I drew, everything outside of this perimeter has a gradient of, you know, all the way down to black. Well, not all the way down, because like it's not fully opaque. It's the opacity set at 35%, but you get what I'm trying to say. Just so that we further emphasize that the bright part of this image, we want to be the window, and we kind of want to have everything outside of the window dim to further emphasize the lightning flashes at the window, to help bring all of the interior lights down like it normally happens in real life when lightning flashes, like the inside of our house just seems darker for a second. Just kind of to really make it feel as real as possible, because all this is completely fake. So we've done 4 steps here. So let's take a look at what it looks like now. It's quick, but I definitely feel like it sells it the best way possible. So we'll watch it one more time. So as you can see, it almost creates like this vignette. That's like probably a bad way to describe it, but you can see right here, the window is pretty well illuminated, and we've kind of created like this darkness here. Like this part of the image is the darkest part of the image, and this part is the brightest. As the lightning is flashing, it almost makes it to where like the house just becomes a little quieter, and the outside of, you know, the window becomes a little bit louder, visually speaking, as it would in real life. And then adding in the sound design really makes it feel almost real, to where it justifies the character kind of getting surprised, you know, being pulled out of her book to turn and look and be like, oh, interesting. And then she carries on. So let's look at the before and after of all of this masking. So I'm going to turn all of this off. I'll leave the sound design on so we can see how silly this is. I mean, when I say it's completely faked, it is completely faked. So let's take a look at the before and after here. So that is the before. Really funny. And all of the layering. We'll watch the after now. I mean, I think that's pretty convincing. I will say I threw this together. I just wanted to kind of show you what you can do to manipulate your images in post-production. It's like the simplest versions of that. So you don't have to be an expert in post-production in order to do something fun like this. But doing things like this really help with the storytelling element of your shots. And so adding in, you know, extra sound design and masking to really kind of like round out your story and round out your image, make your story and make your films all that more visually interesting to watch and be a participant in, because our viewers are visually participating in the stories that we're telling. And so, you know, next time that you're shooting and you are wanting that extra little razzle dazzle, I would consider doing this. It's like super fun and not too difficult. I mean, in essence, it was 4 separate types of masking. It was a little bit more difficult to like time it with the, I guess, the rhythm of the rolling thunder. But once you get that down, once you get like the rhythm down, it's really just kind of like masking it around whatever it is that you're wanting it to kind of flash around, and then really just kind of rounding it out with, you know, something like this where you want all of the lights to dim a little bit more, or whatever it is that makes you feel like it sells well. So that is basically it. I've done this a couple of times. I did it for this video, and then I've also done it for other films, just like I said, to help really sell the story. There's a lot of emotion in weather, weirdly enough. And there's a lot of like, in my opinion, I think rain can be really romantic for weddings, and it even is good luck if it rains on your wedding day. And so if you're filming in an instance where it's raining, you definitely have all these different options to really like do something fun, add in thunder, add in lightning, like all these other visual things that you can do to help tie in the sound. And so I've said before that I think sound is pivotal when it comes to your films. You have to have some sort of sound design to really help your viewers understand, where are you? What's going on? Why are we here? What is it that I'm feeling? Like all of sound can really help us process what it is that we're watching just as much as what we're seeing. And so they work in tandem, but I definitely think that if something is happening in sound, you should do your best to try to match it in sight. And so this is just like a fun little, it's not, I'm no expert, I'm not like the best that there ever is at this, but it is just like a fun little look into my thought process and how I think in terms of approaching my films, and just like fun little things to just like spice up your films, maybe take them to the next level, and just kind of like help you think in that vein. So I hope this was helpful. This was super fun to shoot it. I literally shot it like 2 hours ago, and it was actually raining outside. It's been raining for the last couple days. It's going to rain for the next couple days. It's going to rain for a while because we are in the rainy season. So in honor of that, I just wanted to give you something super cozy to look at, to talk about, maybe like have some fun, learn some things along the way. And yeah, thanks so much for watching and hanging out. I hope this was fun. I hope it was helpful, and if anything, just a little bit entertaining and super cozy to watch. Thanks again for being a part of my creative journey, and thank you so much for including me in your creative journey. I hope to see you next time when I post on YouTube, hoping to be a little bit more consistent about that, every Friday at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. But until next time, ta-ta for now.